Shalom Vaeschanan, famous Shabbos known as Shabbos Nachamu, the Shabbos right after Tisha B'Av every year. And we know this Shabbos, and we call it Shabbos Nachamu because it's right after Tisha B'Av, and we're starving, really, as Klal Yisrael, we're starving for consolation. And if we would actually really understand what Tisha B'Av represents, and what we are really missing, and what we have to live without in our times, then really it would be so difficult to go on. And the more we know and the more we concentrate on it, the more difficult it is to go on. So comes along a Shabbos Nachamu, and we read in the Haftarah of the week, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. And it's not just a consolation we're being given, it's actually a double consolation. And a double consolation has a lot more significance than just a regular consolation would have. And Hashem here is giving us this week a double consolation. And over the years, we've spoken many times in many different angles about what this Nachamu represents. And we're going to try to do just another beautiful angle that the Nesivos Shalom mentions. And the Nesivos Shalom says, you know, that the world was actually created very much in pairs and dual things. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with things that go along with each other, with things that are identical. And the shleimus of avodah in the world really comes through perfecting a dual path. And what does that mean? It says in the Nesivos Shalom, there are two paths that a Yid has to follow. The path of Ahava and the path of Yira. And we see in Gashmias, if we look around the world, in Gashmias it's pretty obvious that Hashem created the things in this world in pairs. We know a person has two eyes, you have two ears, two hands, 2 feet. Each of them comes in pairs. And you know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention over here a Chafetz Chaim, which is not brought down in the Nesivos Shalom. The Chafetz Chaim says that it should not get lost on us that almost everything that a person has is created in pairs except for a person's mouth. Because we have so much trouble controlling what comes out of one mouth, and we have so much trouble dealing with the Yetzer Hara for Lashon Hara and Rechilas and all those things. Could you imagine if a person had 2 mouths? But that's a little bit of a side thing. Maybe we'll speak about it a different week. That's just a Chafetz Chaim. But we see in Gashmi, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a person very much in pairs. Person has 2 things. And the same, says in Nesivos Shalom, comes also with Ruchnius. A person is complete when he follows and he completes the dual path in life, which is the path of Ahava and Yira. And this week's Parsha, in Parshas Vaeschanan, we have the S.S.S, right? It's mentioned twice in the Torah, also a pair, right? It's mentioned in Parshas Yisro, and here this week in Parshas Vaeschanan. And we say that Anochi and Lo Yeh, the first 2 things in the S.S.S, they are said as one. And we know that Chazal tell us they were said as one. Anochi represents mitzvahs aseh, which represent ahava. When we do mitzvahs aseh for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, proactive mitzvahs. And Lo Yeh Lecha, the second one, is the mitzvahs lo yisaseh. And that is Yira. And when we say that it's said as one and said together, the Torah is telling us that a person has to have both paths. You have to have Ava and Yira to be complete. And even though in Gashmias, let's just say a little difference, in Gashmias, Ava and Yira actually contradict each other, right? When you talk about a person who is very loving, and normally when you talk about things in Gashmias that are very loving, you're not discussing Yira, you're not discussing fear. So in Gashmias, in a really, they contradict each other. However, in Ruchnias, Chazal tell us, in Ruchnias, Ava and Yira complement each other. And the same is in this week's Parsha with Zohar and Shomar. Shabbos is said in one Aseret Dibros with Zohar es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadshay. And in our Parsha, our Parsha uses a lashon of Shomar. those two, Zachar and Shamar, also represent Ahava and Yira, the two different ways that a person has to approach life, that a person has to approach Shabbos. In Megillas Eicha that we learned earlier this week, we read another double Lashon, and that double Lashon is Chet Chata Yerushalayim. As Klal Yisrael, when we did Averos that caused the Churban, the Megillas Eicha tells us Chet Chata Yerushalayim, a double Lashon of sinning. Says in Nesivos Shalom, the double Lashon there in Eicha tells us, among other things, it tells us they were missing the two Yesodos. They were missing both Ahava and Yira. And Ahava and Yira are up here. Just like physically, if a person is handicapped in one of their hands or one of their feet, of course you can still function, albeit more slowly. So too, says in Nesivos Shalom very interestingly, that one who only has Ahava or Yira, you're not totally cut off from Hashem. You're, so to speak, missing your shleimus, but you're never totally caught up from Hashem. But in the time of the Churban, they were chata b'kiflayim. Chazal tell us, chata b'Yerushalayim, they were chata b'kiflayim. They had a double avera. It was chet chata on the mitzvahs aseh and on the mitzvahs lois aseh. And that is what was happening at the time of the Churban. And the Nesivos Shalom goes through a number of other things that they transgressed at the time of the Churban. But there's one thing that we really, really need to talk about for a moment, and that teaches us an extremely important lesson for life. When the Yetzer Hara entices a person to do an Aveira, now listen to this, more than wanting a person to actually do the Aveira, you know what the Yetzer Hara wants? He wants something even more. He wants what he can get following the person doing an Aveira. And he wants that even more. And you know what that is? That's the person, once he does an Aveira, that's a person getting depressed about what he did. A person getting depressed over doing the Aveira. And once a person gets depressed, and they give up because they were over an Aveira, then the Yetzer Hara has you. To make you do an Aveira, okay, he made you do an Aveira, but once a person gets really down about it and he gets depressed, that's when the Yetzer Hara has you, because you feel very low, and you feel that you have nothing to lose, and it's possible for you to transgress almost everything at that point. And that too, says in the Nesivos Shalom, is Chet Chata b'Yerushalayim. Chet Chata Yerushalayim tells us Chata b'Kiflayim. They were over on the actual Aveira, but there was another problem. They fell into the trap of the Yetzer Hara even more. They fell into the trap of giving up. They got depressed about it. They were down about it. And once they were down, that's it. The Yetzer Hara had them. So comes the Navi in this week's Haftarah and tells us, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. You have here a double Nechama on Yerushalayim. And what is a double Nechama? One is for the actual Averos that were done. And the other Nachamu, the other Nechama, is to lift us up from our depression, from being down about doing an Aveira, to lift us up and tell us that no matter how far we think we've gone, and no matter how bad it is, the things that we've done, Hashem is always, always with us. And that is an emunah that is not just for the time of the Churban. It's a Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. It's a consolation for every single year. For this year as well as every previous year. And hopefully Mashiach will come and this city will once again be the city of light and be the city of the time of Mashiach, but it will always be that way. It's a message that we have to know, that we have to retain that emunah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is here for a double consolation. First of all, on what we did, and second of all, to lift us up, that we shouldn't be down about it, and we shouldn't be depressed. The Geula is right here. B'shuv Hashem Eshivas Tzion Hayinu Kecholmim. Says in the Nesivos Shalom, I want to end off with this beautiful word. The Nesivos Shalom says, when Hashem is going to bring us back to Tzion, we're going to be like dreamers. Hayinu Kecholmim. What does it mean that we will be like dreamers? What are we dreaming about? The Nesivos Shalom says like this: Hayinu Kecholmim, we're going to be just like Yosef in Mitzrayim, where Yosef had a dream. Yosef had those two dreams, and in those two dreams, Yosef saw that at the end of the day, everything that happened to him, his being sold, his being thrown in the pit, the whole trouble that he has with his brothers, everything that Hashem did for us was for the best, was every step along the way was hashgacha pratis, was being watched by Hashem. So b'shuv Hashem Yeshivas Tzion, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us back to a rebuilt Yerushalayim, when He brings us back to Tzion, Hayinu Kechomim, we're going to see that our entire history, all the Crusades and all the Inquisitions and all the Holocaust and everything, and all the wars and everything that happened to Klal Yisrael throughout history, Hayinu Kechomim, we're going to see that it's a dream, that everything was thought out by HaKadosh Baruch Hu and everything was for our best. Let's have the double consolation. Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Let this year be a real consolation, and let us be the final consolation that we need from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the final one in Golus. Let us see the city of Yerushalayim be rebuilt speedily in our days.